Hello everybody, this is Ryan over at High Carb Regenerator. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about my journey. I've had a lot of people asking me, did I lose weight? How much weight have I lost? So I'm going to go over that in this video. I'm going to go over some of the stuff that I didn't go over in previous videos. I have made this video before. I think it's been actually about 1,000 subscribers since I've made one of these videos because I didn't want to bombard people with the exact same information. But I do, there are some things that have come to light recently that I actually think are more interesting to me than the diet. And so I'm going to get into a few of those things and let's see how this goes. So in 1999, I decided I was tired of being a little bit overweight. Now at that time, overweight to me was probably about 235 or something like that, 240, somewhere in that region. Nowhere near in the the crazy realm that I will eventually get to. And so 345 I think was the most I've ever had weighed in my 20s. And I'm like, you know what? Actually, I wasn't even in my 20s at the point. I was still in my teens. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try doing keto. Really wasn't a thing at that point. As a matter of fact, when I brought up keto with my doctors, they're like, bro, you are going to kill yourself with that diet. I'm like, whatever, you know, you haven't been right about anything else. I'm going to try this. So I did the keto, a variation of the keto. You know, there was not a lot of information on it. So I did a lot of, I worked at a food distribution plant at this point that also had a retail end. And at the end of the day, you know, some of the stuff, it was either going to get thrown out or I could take it. So and it wasn't bad. It didn't look good anymore, but I knew it wasn't bad. So it was a lot of salmon. It was actually a lot of expensive fish. I got all this stuff for free. Or we would get samples in and the samples wouldn't sell, go out into the restaurant. Some of the restaurants wouldn't want them. So I would take the samples and I would be like, oh, you know, I'll take it. You know what I mean? So I got a lot of that stuff for free. And then I would get a lot of broccoli and once in a while I would have sweet potatoes. I think you're a lot of refeed or something like that. Keto nowadays is a lot different than keto was. Not saying it's any better these days. I think it's even worse. Keto was a little bit different back in the day. There wasn't a whole lot of information on it. It was basically a high protein, low carb diet, basically. And fat was definitely allowed and accepted. So it was kind of a cross between a carnivore and a keto diet, because I know I got a lot of keto warriors on here over the years. Well, that wasn't 100% keto. You had like 3 grams too much, or, you know, like, I don't even want to hear it, man. Like, whatever, dude. Like, there's so many rules to this keto thing. It's unreal. It's unreal. Or they'll switch their mind, you know, like, if I say I had a lot of fat in the keto, well, they're like, oh, you're supposed to have more protein. Got to have more protein, man. You didn't do it right. Or if you say, well, I had, you know, a lot of this, and they're like, well, you got to do it this way, man. You didn't do it right. And I'm like, whoa, you guys are crazy, right? You guys are nuts. And you go through this during keto, during a lot of, when you don't eat a lot of carbohydrates, you go crazy. You start like going nuts. You have all this energy all the time. You can't sleep. Your hair starts falling out. You know, it's just, you smell terrible. You're constantly like, man, you know, like I need some food, or, you know, it's like, but keto tells you that you can eat whatever you want to, and you know what I mean? So anyway, so in 99 to 2000, I did lose a rather large amount of weight, but I didn't feel great. And I actually had to stop lifting because I didn't have enough energy to lift. So I kind of like changed the keto diet here and there over the years just so I could actually still lift and still have the energy. What I did do in 99 though, is I started walking for 60 minutes every single day. Now, that sounds fine for most people. I had a dislocating left foot. I'm not going to go into that in this video at all. I made a video about that somewhere in this channel of mine. I had a dislocating left foot, and at my job, I was on my feet all day. And some days it was not unusual to work 12, 16 hours a day, right? It was not, food distribution is nuts. So my foot was already hurting, but you have to have a consistent walking. You have to have, it has to be consistent. It can't be, you run to the freezer to get this, or you can't, I'm talking like in distribution terms. You can't run to this area to get this. It has to be a consistent effort. So what I did was I would walk before I ate dinner, and then I would eat dinner and basically go to bed. It was nuts. So I was running myself to the ground. But anyways, I did lose a bunch of weight. And I didn't even want to talk about this much, but here we go. So I lost a bunch of weight, and the next summer, so I started this, it was coming into when it would be snowing, like the late fall, early winter. And the reason I mention that is because my parents could see what I was doing, so they actually bought a treadmill. So some days I would use a treadmill at the house, and some days, even though I had 3 gym memberships, but I don't know. My parents are random like that, so they bought a treadmill, and so I would either use the treadmill or I would go outside, depending on the weather. And the next summer, or that next late spring, early summer, I went with my friends to the beach. Took my shirt off, and they're like, "Bro, what happened to you?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "You're half of what you used to be." And I'm like, "Oh, I've just been doing the walking and all this other stuff." I have really, really, really wide shoulders and a barrel chest. So you really can't actually tell sometimes when I've lost a bunch of weight, because my shoulders just make my shirt hang over, anyway, so they couldn't actually tell until I took my shirt off, and they were astonished at how much weight I had lost. But as the years went on, I was doing this, and I did change the diet a little bit. I started adding in yams here and there, and everybody's going to be like, "Well, this is why you gain weight," But anyways, I just didn't actually have enough energy. I was ephedra was still legal at the time, so I was taking a lot of ephedra, the ECA stack. So it was ephedra, caffeine, and aspirin. Great thing, right? And that was how I was getting a lot of my energy. And no matter how many hours a day that you work, or how many hours that you're actually awake, if you take an ECA stack, like half the time you just cannot sleep. So I was not sleeping. I was doing my walking, working, going to school. I was still in high school. No, actually I was going into college at this time, and it was a hot mess. So I had to add other stuff in, but I was maintaining pretty good. And then I met my now ex-wife, and we went to a lot of restaurants, so I was ketoizing everything, and most of the people didn't want to do that at the time. So, and go on over the years, and I started gaining, and come fast forward 10 years later, and I was trying to maintain keto most of the years. But sometimes, I don't know anybody who's on keto that doesn't fall off. Anyways, I got to 405 pounds. So I'll show a picture of when I was kind of close to 405 pounds. When you're 405 pounds, there is one picture, and nobody seems to be able to find it. It's vanished in the thin air. There is one picture when I was 405. I was on a couch. I took up the entire couch. And nobody seems to be able to find this. I don't think, if at one point in my life I can actually find this picture again, I will put it in one of the videos just so everybody can see it. But here's one when I was probably 395-ish. All right, so that's what I look like. And at this point, anybody who eats a lot of protein, a lot of fat, starts realizing that they smell like ammonia all day long. All day long. You smell like ammonia. You smell terrible. I was throwing up stomach acid at night, and I'm like, this is not for me. I started going to doctors. They're like, blah, 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 blah. Nothing ever came out that made any sense. One of them tried to put me on a sweat blocker because I was sweating out ammonia all day long. I'm like, how is that your answer? How have you gone to school for 25 years? And this is the best that you can give me. And they're like, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, okay. So I filled it. I always filled these things just so, because I feel like they are always watching you. Like they're always watching you. And so I filled it, threw it out like I always did. And well, you're supposed to fill them with water and then throw them out. And that's what I did. And then I finally kind of acknowledged Sandy, who was my lady at the time. She's now my ex, but she was doing almost vegan at that time. And I'm like, you know what? I actually went to school for nutrition at one point. I got certified in nutrition. And I'm like, vegan was actually in this book. I didn't even know what vegan was, but we always made fun of the plant eaters at the gym because they were like, oh, how can they lift? Meanwhile, I mean, if you look at some of the countries with people who eat that way, they're pretty strong. But, you know, I made fun of it. I'm like, but I had to try something. So I went basically vegetarian for a couple months. I dropped meat. I've never been a huge fan of cheese, so cheese really wasn't that hard to drop. But some of the other aspects of milk, I really had a hard time dropping. And then the month that I finally gave up dairy, I lost 50 pounds in 1 month. It was roughly 50 pounds in 1 month. So when people ask what part of the animal thing that I would 100% drop, dairy, 100%. That stuff, I don't know what is in it. I mean, I know what's in it. It's enough formula to get a calf to like 1,000 pounds. And we think it's normal to anyway, I'm not going to get into it. It's not part of this. So that was how I started my vegan journey. It started in late 2010, I believe, into 2011. Probably by, I want to say February of 2011, I was straight up vegan. And then we had an issue with housing because of it was a perfect storm. So we ended up having an issue with housing. We had to live in a motel for a little while, a couple months, 3-4 months. And there was this tiny fridge. I couldn't make all my stuff anymore. And I decided instead of just like having bananas or something like that I would just add back cheese. And I'm like, why are you adding back cheese? So I lost a ton of weight when I first went vegan, right? And I added cheese back in. And I gained all that weight back plus, right? So I was still well into my 300s. And I came across a couple other people like Dan the Man, who I just did a video about. And I came across this guy, Robert Morse, who I thought was legit at the time. I don't anymore. People ask me to do videos about the guy. I will not do it. The guy's not, I don't care what anybody says. He's a fake doctor. He gave himself his own certificate, which I give him credit because actually the original doctors, this is what they did. They gave themselves credit for all this kind of stuff. The guys and the women who started the doctor whole thing, they gave themselves credit for this whole thing. You know, they gave themselves, they started these schools and stuff like that. So there was originally at some point no such thing as a diploma. They gave it to themselves, right? So he did this. But after I started taking his tinctures, and some of his tinctures had like body parts in or a desiccated liver and stuff like that. It wasn't the tinctures, it was like his little tablets, and he's like, well, these animals knew that they were bred for this. And I'm like, I didn't really buy into that. And it just, the more I looked into this guy, I didn't buy into it. And then one time I couldn't get a hold of my person that I was supposed to order from because they ran it kind of weird. So I ordered it from Robert Morse's actual office, right? And then I couldn't get a hold of this lady at all for like weeks, right? And all of a sudden, so I ordered this stuff, and all of a sudden she can call me. I'm like, oh, that's weird. I said, I've been trying to get a hold of you for like 2 weeks now, and nothing. And then I order from this person or from the actual company, and I got you calling me. I said, why don't you guys do me a favor? Cancel the whole thing and we'll be done. I'll never talk to you again. And I'm never going to promote you ever again. I will actually demote you. And this is what I have done. So I'm not doing this was my little skit on Robert Morse. He's false. He's fake. Can't stand the guy. The only thing that he has that I like is his combination chart or whatever, and you can find that free on the internet. Don't give him money. He's not worth it. So anyway, that's my little skit on Robert Morse, and you're not going to do that kind of stuff with me. We're done. See ya. So that is kind of how I got started. Then I was working at the bank system for quite a few years. Well, actually, no, this bank system, I was only working there for a little while, but I had to go down to Philadelphia or Philly, and it was easier I had to go down to Philly, so it was easier actually just to catch a train to get down there than to try to figure out parking and everything. I don't mind driving in cities, but parking in cities kind of is a pain in the ass, especially when you're in a suit. It's like 90,000 degrees outside and you got to park, 50 miles away. So I just, I took the train down there, and on my way back, I came across this guy, Arnold, over at Arnolds Way, been vegan for years. And he's like, basically giving me a sippy cup, like, forcing it down of this green smoothie. And that is where everything took off for me. That is where everything took off. 16 minutes into this, that is where my life changed so spectacularly. I can't even tell you. It has been a wonderful journey. I know that I still got weight on me, but my health is so much better than it was. I can carry the weight pretty easily. Like my arms, my legs, my face, everything is lean. I got to get to the torso. I'm like holding my torso. I've got the most holy shirt you've ever seen in your life. I mean, you can kind of see. So I'm like trying to stay off. It's laundry day, right? So I do have a little bit of a weight to lose on my torso, but other than that, it has been absolutely wonderful. And this is why I promote it. Now, I was raw vegan to lose most of the weight. I really fully admit that. Everybody's like, well, it's because you're asleep and everything. Honestly, when I was raw vegan and losing all that weight, I was going to bed 5 a.m., 7 a.m., something like that, getting up whenever the hell I wanted to. I didn't have a job at the time because finding a job during... I'm not going to go there, but like finding a job in Philadelphia, that is such a joke. I don't know if it still is, but sometimes it would take you 12, 13 months. So I was doing what I can. I was going looking for jobs every day. I was doing the couch to 5K. But the weight, I mean, it was just coming off. Matter of fact, I went to one of my previous jobs, which is at the bank, just to make a deposit. So anyway, I came across one of the women that I used to work with, and she's like, "How much have you lost?" I'm like, I don't have a scale. I don't know, but a lot. She's like, "Yeah, you're right about a lot." I mean, so I had been losing a ton of weight, and actually that is when I came into the post office right after that. And I kept maintaining it. But then this is actually way longer than I thought it was going to be. I actually ended up getting put into a very busy, for me at that time, I thought this was a busy post office. They were working me 12 to 14 hours a day. Again, I can't seem to get away from that. And I just stopped caring about the diet. And that's actually when I gained weight. And then 2016 is when I decided I had to take it back again. I stopped adding the fat. Anytime I add fat in, like a lot of fat, like anything more than like 30 or 40 grams in a day, probably 30 grams in a day, my weight just goes up, quick. So 2016, I decided that I was just going to do kind of what I had done in the past, but I did not want to go 100% raw because it's just so limiting in the aspect of going out to eat or going over somebody's house or just different things, finding fruit. So I didn't want to go down that route again because finding fruit was way easier in 2011 when I started than it started getting in 2016. It was very noticeably harder to get really good fruit 6 years later. So I knew that I couldn't go that route again, but I did do most of the day I was raw, and then I would come home and eat starches, and I added in cycling. Now, East PA, where I lived, just outside of Philly there is so many hills. If you can't lose weight climbing hills on a bike, I don't know what you're eating. You must be eating straight up lard. And even then, you might still lose weight. So anyway, I had a ton of hills to climb. I knew very rural roads that I could ride on that had like no traffic whatsoever. Never saw a car the entire time. And I ran with that and added the diet into it. Now, I don't really think it was the riding as much as the diet. Now, at this time, I was going to bed early because I had to get to work between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., somewhere in there. And so I was going to bed pretty early. So maybe that did contribute. And that is another thing that I wanted to touch on is I am getting back to that, going to bed early. It has been an absolute struggle so far, which is why if you see I'm a little tired, I have not really slept well for a couple of weeks while I'm trying to transition back into getting into bed early. For example, Saturday I went to bed at 9:30 at night. I didn't actually fall asleep until 5:30 a.m. 8 hours. I actually considered just getting up and hopefully the next day would be better, but I didn't. So I fell asleep. I only slept for a few hours. Last night, I was astonished that it still took me 2 hours to fall asleep. So I know that it could have been a part of a thing because I was going to bed at 8 o'clock, but I wasn't sleeping that well. Sleep has always been kind of an issue. I'm trying desperately to change that. And another thing that I've noticed, and this is something that I really want to hit on in this channel, I've tried before, but the videos just don't get pushed, is biomechanics of a fat person is so efficient. It's not even funny. It's crazy how much more inefficient a skinny person's stride and walk is than a fat person's. And I think that plays a huge role. It plays even a huge role on the bike. You know, I was working with Nutrition by Victoria for a little while because she's a huge on this sleep thing, and she's the one that told me to do the get a baseline on the bike, which I didn't do before because my hemoglobin's very high and my ability to have endurance is extremely high. It's like it's so high, it's at a level that people actually pay for, right? With EPO and stuff like that. It's just always been that way. I've even got it in a blood test. You can see it in a blood test. It's crazy how high my hemoglobin is. So I am working on the baseline. I'm very happy that I'm doing this. But I do want to start touching on this stuff in my videos because biomechanics of a fat person is crazy once you start changing it because your entire life starts changing. It's crazy. I never had my hips moving on the bike before. They move now. I'm actually sore. I'm like sore, like I lifted weights yesterday because of how much movement I actually had bilaterally on the bike because my hips actually finally moved. The way I did this, I'm not going to go into it in this video, but if you are interested and you actually made it this far in the video, let me know down below because I find that this is such an interesting topic. Now, it's not going to replace a bad diet. So don't think that. But the biomechanics, once you change them, it was life-changing. Now, some people might already have this. Some people might already have perfect biomechanics. It's very possible. But some of us don't. I'm not going to go into that in this video. It's been long enough. So anyway, this has been my journey. I was 405 at one point. I got down to about 230-ish. And then I'm back in the 270s right now. But my thyroid and everything is finally working. And I've never been 270 and had this slender of a face, slender of arms, slender of legs. So I know it's just retention because my body is working. I've had liver issues ever since keto, and I've had kidney issues ever since keto, which I probably should have said at that time when I made it in that part of this video. But I've had those two, and I know that I'm finally getting those corrected. And once those are, the weight is just going to fall off. It's crazy how it happens. Some people it's steady. Some people like me, it's not. You'll go almost an entire year of being one weight, and then all of a sudden it comes off like Lent. Like, when I did the raw stint for Lent, I lost 30 pounds in a month, in 40 days. And I really haven't gained it. So this has been my journey. hopefully this did you some good. If it did, or if you know somebody would do you some good, share the video. Comments, questions down below, like always. Really helps out the video, the algorithm. And that's it. It's been a long journey. I actually had completed the journey at one point. And, you know, as soon as you add fat back in, if you're somebody like, you know, me or anybody else who has these issues, as soon as you add fat back in, you get fat again. And you just can't do it. There might be at some point, you know, I like McDougal, I know, but he's always been slender. But I know he adds in like 1,200 calories worth of almonds or nuts a day, because people kept complaining about how skinny he was. So that may never be you. That may never be me. But at least you can get to a point where you are happy with the skin that you're in. But you're going to have to probably stay low fat your entire life. But it's really not that big of a deal. Once you get used to it, it's absolutely amazing. You just have to maintain it. Anyway, comments, questions down below. Share the video if it did do you any good, or somebody any good. And I will talk to you next time.